That's a great
Yeah,
intro.
thank
That's a great
you.
intro.
Yeah, I worked with my cousin with it, and I was saying to him, we need to switch it up a little bit. And he goes, well, what do you want to switch up? I was like, let's put the holographic medical in because that's a new thing this year and new forefront. And so I found a really cool AI video of it, and we're like, and even he was like, oh, yeah, we got to use that. So that's how that got birthed into the intro.
Is this your cousin? Is this the mafia loan collector, or the other one?
The other one.
Just kidding,
Oh.
folks. Just kidding.
So, welcome everyone to Riding Through the Unknown. And we're having another grand adventure tonight. And I am so blessed, so honored, and so appreciative of my dear friend coming back on and making a return visit. And I just want to say, in full transparency, this is how we are. We're not putting on a show for y'all because we're on podcast. This is how we always talk. And so you guys are in for a treat because we always have fun and try to make each other laugh and survive what's going on in the world. And so I give you guys a man who needs no introduction, but I'll allow him to do one anyway. The one, the only, incorrigible, contactee extraordinaire, wise one, Alex Collier.
Yes, he's CEO, shipping clerk, and janitor of Resolute Mountain.
Oh. So, how are you right now with what's going on in the world?
you know, I grew up the oldest of 11, and it was seven boys, four girls. And my dad, we would just do crazy things, and at times we were totally out of control. And my father would just shake his head, like I just like, he's like thinking to himself, like, I don't believe what I'm seeing, right? I'm the head of the house, and the house is an insane asylum with all these kids. And he would just shake his head, and we were literally waiting to see his head roll off his shoulders from shaking it so much. Well, Michael, if I show up one day and I'm the headless Collier, you know my head is rolled off my shoulders because I can't believe what I'm seeing, and I get that a lot of this is the show. A lot of all of this is a chess game, and it's the storm, and it's all these components. But what really blows my mind is the level of stupidity. I'm just like, how did these people get so old being this dumb? I just, Richard Pryor used to say that all the time. You don't get old being a fool. And true story. And I'm just looking at some of this stuff, and and then, in government, we have, I don't know that there's anything to salvage. I think we need to completely start over. But one of the things that's really interesting is that we have the most expensive nursing home in the world, and that's the Senate of the United States. It's nothing more than a nursing home. You know, it's just like, oh my god. And
You know what I
I,
feel is
I
this.
I just think they put something in the water, and when you get there, you have all these hopes and dreams, and you're on top of things, and you're sharp. And then they give you the drinks, and they give you the water, and you turn out, and all that fluoride just makes you dumber and dumber and dumber, to the point where you're just like, you have no you're passing all these laws, but you yourselves have no clue as to what's really going on in the world.
Right.
Because they're
And
in this bubble. They're in this bubble.
they are. And one thing that I find that cracks me up the most about our government is they're like, okay, we can't have a president, beyond these terms. But we're not going to put terms on ourselves. And when anybody says, hey, we should put terms, the people that are getting the terms are the ones that have to vote on it. It's like, how many people are going to sit there and go, oh, yeah, I want to limit how much time I'm in here?
Right, I'm making all this cake. I'm making all this money. I got stocks. I'm playing the market because I got inside information. I've got NGOs surrounding me, coming to me every day with $14.2 trillion, saying, "Hey, we need your help with this. We need your help with that." And somebody, he had Omar is the perfect example. She was minus $56,000 when she got sworn into Congress. She's now worth over between 30 and 40 million. I'm just like,
Yeah.
we're in the wrong business, dude.
We
You're
are.
totally in the wrong business.
We totally should have drank the Kool-Aid.
Really, we are totally doing the wrong thing. So we all should run for the Senate and for Congress.
Yeah. The only thing is after drinking the Kool-Aid, I don't know how well I'd be able to sleep at night.
Well, they're doing it, obviously. I don't know.
I wonder if they are or if they're not being turned off and that's their sleep mode.
Flipping the switch.
Yep.
On the clone.
Be like, oh, we got to recharge the battery, so we're going to put them to sleep for a couple hours.
I don't know. So other than that, the good thing is that we do have the Brunson case. And obviously there's something to it. It hasn't been dismissed because they put the brothers under an NDA. So, and we haven't heard anything from them since then, since they said that they were under an NDA. We haven't heard anything from them. So I'm hoping that that's the trump card, or at least one of them, where you can just say, okay, we're done. We're done with the corporation. We're done with the shenanigans. We're done with all the excuses. Here you go. You did this back at the 2020 election, and it's over. And they clean house. They arrest virtually everybody. And then what they have to do is, I believe it's 120 days. They would put us under martial law because technically we wouldn't have a government. And then the military would have to put together an election in the next 120 days after that event happened. After martial law, they would have 120 days to have an election. And it would be a paper ballot election because the military's running it. And that's what they do in the military. They don't use the rigged machines. It's paper ballot, end of story. So that's what they would do.
And my hopes would be is if I was the cabal or deep state or whatever you want to call them in the swamp and I see the people above me getting arrested by the military going into tribunals, I would not be raising my hand and going, I'll run. I'll take the office.
I think there would be people. I do. Because, this system was corrupt from the moment we put in the Federal Reserve. This system was in the process of becoming corrupt and bought and paid for. And it is, end of story. And because it was corrupt from the beginning, it would only breed corruption. So I think that there would be a lot of people that would want to straighten this thing out and make every attempt to take us to a constitutional republic once again. It would be a huge learning curve, no matter who, because we haven't lived under a constitutional republic in 150 years. We'd have to start over. And it would be a huge education. And we would also, at that time, get the real history of our country, not the little snippets that they saved for us, and then they wrapped all these other bullshit stories around. But the real story about how things went down and what happened in the Civil War, how the Rothschild Bank was paying both the North and the South, And then the North was putting pressure on Lincoln to end the war, and he said no, and they pulled his funding. So he printed the greenbacks, which is where we get that expression for the US dollar, greenbacks. He was printing those in order to pay for everything. And then the British Army or British Navy was going to invade the North, and the Russian fleet intercepted the British and stopped them from actually invading the North, Washington, D.C. And almost nobody knows about that history. They totally had our back because the Russians and the British have always been at odds with each other. They have never gotten along, even to this day. They've never gotten along. So, and that's a fascinating part of history. And, the British system that we've all been living under, especially the British monetary system, the central banks, it's Russia's evil, Russia's evil, Russia's evil, and honestly, are they perfect? No, obviously, but neither are we. We've made a lot of mistakes, but they want to destroy these people, and it's just, and they want everybody else to do it for them. But in destroying them, we destroy ourselves. It's just like, what are you people thinking? It just makes no sense.
It kind of makes me think of, we used to hear growing up in school of, we're going to go into nuclear war and it's going to become a survival of the fittest, and the select few will come through because we have bunkers for the brightest and the best of the best. And I always sat there when I heard that, I always thought it said, who's picking who are the brightest and the best of the best? Because if it's the low man on the totem pole, you're not really getting the best of the best, because everybody is the best of the best to him.
It was always their own. It was always their own, and they would have us hide underneath our desks.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being safe from a nuclear weapon underneath a school desk? Those things were as big as, they were this big. The desks were this big,
And it was completely open except for the top.
Yeah, it had legs like a daddy long leg spider,
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. and it's just, God, we were all knuckleheads.
And you'll appreciate this in my new book that I wrote, The Deeper Insights into the Mind of Michael. Shameless plug since I'm the host. Available on Amazon.
Oh, there you. It's available on Amazon.
It is.
How many pages is it?
Around 100 to 120, I think.
Is it?
I don't number them.
Okay, is it on sale or is it full price?
It's full price right now, but full price is like way less than what a lot of books are, because I'm new, so I keep the numbers less than $30 for the book. Usually it's around 20, depending on which version.
Well, you have to make a little bit so you can eat, right?
Exactly. And one of the last chapters in the book, if it isn't the last chapter, is dedicated to things that we just blindly accept as truths. And I point out stuff like, the grass is green. Why do we say the grass is green? Because someone told us grass is green, and we go, okay, grass is green.
let me address that, though. But it is true, the grass is always green over the septic tank. Okay, it's always green over the septic tank.
There's plenty of water there. And nutrients, yeah.
I wouldn't let the kids play on that spot, but the grass is always green.
Oh, but yeah, and one thing though that I found interesting, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is I kept hearing about people talking about the moon, not being always around. And I was like, I had a hard time with that, because in school we were taught an asteroid hit the Earth, a chunk of it broke off, we got our moon. And so I was like, makes perfect sense. Okay. And so I started researching it and found out the Zulu have pre lunar tribal civilization knowledge. And I'm like, well, that's interesting, but that's just one tribe. Then I found the pre Columbians had it, the indigenous had it, the Greeks and Romans had it. And I was like, this is way too many cultures to be. The moon was here from the beginning and these people don't know what they're talking about. I was like, no, this is way too many having stories of civilizations before the moon appeared in the sky.
Well, you see, the moon was like a cruise ship, and there were a bunch of other extraterrestrial beings on it, and they were just cruising the solar system. And one, they ran out of gas, and two, the engine broke down. So it got stuck.
I was gonna say, what is it like? Captain of the Costa ships running the ship
Yep.
up there.
And they're supposed to get FedEx parts, but they still haven't showed up yet. 11,000 years later.
I'd be fed up by that time.
I know. So many things. So many things.
And I love when people go, well, nobody could pull the wool over our eyes with that, with that kind of information and everything. And I go, really? Let me give you a few more examples and let's see, how many of these that aren't true, and be like, and watch them be like, okay, you're right, and walk away because there's no argument to it.
It's just nuts.
It is. And, you brought up history, and one of the interesting things, I didn't even think about this till I was looking at a new channel on TV, and it goes his story, and then it goes the story network, and I was like, oh my god, that's right, history is his story. And I had this like booming moment of going, history is not history, it's a story that was told, and we all just believe it because we don't want to rewrite the books and re-educate all the professors who made their careers off of misinformation and going, oh, here's the truth now.
It's not we that don't want to do it. It's the powers that be.
Well, that's who I refer to as we.
They just keep peddling that nonsense over and over and over again, and I know, and they rarely make corrections, especially with the narrative. There may be individual little components where they will make changes or corrections, but when it comes to the narrative, oh, that's like sacred. You don't change the narrative because we got so many generations to believe this, and we're not gonna change it, and we're not gonna let you change it because as long as you believe this narrative, then you are functionally illiterate, and that's exactly where we need you to be, is functionally illiterate.
That's true. And I have an interesting question I want to put towards you. It's a theory I literally just came up with, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. Dealing with history is, so we have like Alexander the Great who does this monumental deal. Then along comes, say Leonidas with the Spartans, and then comes like Washington, Lincoln. I know I'm skipping a lot of people, but there's always like one person who does something grand scale in history that defies the odds. And I can't help wonder, knowing what like you and I know now, could that have been a starseed or a hybrid who said, hey, I'm going to try and wake people up and let's do this, and then they disappear into history because the people didn't wake up like they thought?
Would you excuse me for 1 second? I want to go to my desk, which is just over here, and come back with a book, and I
Sure.
will address that. Okay. So I'll be right back, folks.
Wow, I got Alex getting a book. I don't know how many people get this. So wow, I can't wait to see what's on this book.
Oh my God! And he moves. He moves. He sings. He does dishes.
Does he tap dance?
No, he does not. No. He's changed quite a few diapers, though. This is what's really interesting. Is I've always been, ever since I was a very young man, a lad. I was always interested in the nights, and there is a video that was done. You know the guy who does the Y-Files?
Yes.
Yeah, he's very, very good. He did an interview with a gentleman by the name of Scott Wolter, Wolter. And this is his latest book, The Greatest Templar Tale Never Told.
I have that book.
And have you read it yet?
I've read parts of it, but I haven't really gotten into it because I've been dealing with
your shtick.
No, I've been dealing with some family situations and shows, and had a conference and all kinds of stuff being on my plate right now. So literally sitting down to read a book is like maybe 5-10 minutes a day.
Anyway, what this book makes reference to, and pieces of this story have been out and uncovered for 1,000 years. There you go. You're the man. You're the man. So pieces of this have been out for 1,000 years in many different places. Everybody was trying to piece the story together and have it make sense. And what this book essentially talks about is the evidence that they have found. Documented scrolls, ancient scrolls that were hidden and buried all over the planet, especially here in the United States, to keep it from the monarchies of Europe and the Vatican. Because the monarchies of Europe and the Vatican, they all had a plan, and that was to steal the bloodline of someone who was very, very special, who was on this planet. And if you look at the Shroud of Turin, it would appear that whoever that was crucified didn't live, did not survive. But new evidence has come forward to show that it's possible that that individual did live and did survive. And it was in that process of surviving and coming back that the image was created on the shroud. Now, what's really interesting about the blood on the shroud is that it has the mother's chromosome, but it does not have a father's chromosome. There is no male chromosome. So how is it that it's a male child? How is it? Okay. So was he special? Was he gifted to humanity? These are all questions that have still yet to be answered. However, that man did have a family. That man did have offspring. His offspring flourished. And there are millions of that gentleman's bloodline all over the world, predominantly Europe and the United States. And this book and the books that precede this are all about their journey to prove this using ancient maps. They were able to go to sites and dig up records stone tablets, rune tablets. All of this stuff has been verified, carbon dated, scrolls that talk about the fact that that particular bloodline, which was being protected by the Templars, came to the New World, came to America, which everybody knew was here. It was no secret. Columbus didn't discover shit. Alexander the Great had maps in 25 BC showing the entire surface of the planet, east and west of North America. He had it all. He even shows in his maps, which Admiral Perry Reese used for his map, shows Antarctica without ice. And using infrared or some kind of a radar, they were able to penetrate the ice. The mapping, the color, the shape of the coastline is exactly what's on the Perry Reese map. Maybe a few changes here and there, but for the most part, it's almost dead on. Well, how could that be if it was under ice for 20 million years? How could it be? How would they know what it looked like if it's been under ice for 20 million years? Because it wasn't. It wasn't. Okay? There was a pole shift, a physical pole shift, and Antarctica ended up at the bottom. So, see, he agrees.
Yep.
So, there's all this stuff, and it's absolutely fascinating. And it tells a completely different story. And what's really interesting is that it gives us insight to the people that were doing these things. They were not Satan worshipers. They were absolutely profound people who not only loved humanity, but they loved themselves and they loved the Creator. All they wanted was for people to be free. That's all they wanted. And this is about the journey of particularly one particular family. And if you've watched the Da Vinci Code, the last name of the family is Sinclair. That's at least one of the names of the family lineages. There are a couple more, which I won't mention, but they're in the book. They give you everything here in the book. So, that's fascinating. So I know we talk about disclosure about ETs. And, that is good. That is important for us to have perspective that we're not alone. But in my humble opinion, and that's all it is, my own humble opinion, that is not the greatest disclosure we're going to have. The greatest disclosure we're going to have is who we are, who we truly are. Because that is what's going to help us realign ourselves, come together as a humanity, and decide to make changes that benefit everyone. And it isn't going to have to be forced upon us. There isn't going to be any tyrannical ever again ruling us. We're going to know exactly what to do. Because we all have a profound history ourselves.
That's great.
Absolutely profound history.
Yeah, that's true. And I was on a panel on Sunday, and we were talking about blue entities, cosmic blue rays. What does the blue? Why is that so profound and spread throughout everything? We look at, and we somehow got onto blue eyes, and somebody goes, "Oh yeah, blue eyes is a sign that you're part of this bloodline, and only that bloodline has blue eyes, so they're all related." And I was like, that seems like a crazy notion. But then I was like, living in the world we're in, the crazy notions seem to be true. So I'm curious if you had heard about that and what you think about that thought.
No, I don't know anything about the blue eyes, but typically the skin color, and and our science has all these reasons for this and for that, and the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, they really don't have a clue. They just make shit up And they have made shit up so that they would make us think that they're really smart and that they actually have all the answers. They rarely will ever say, well, we just don't know. It's rare that they ever say that. So what they'll do is they'll just make shit up that fits into the narrative that they've given about history. The reality about the different skin tones has to do with with the DNA, and that particular and every particular DNA has to do with a star, a system, a frequency. Remember, everything's frequency. Skin color has a lot to do with not only the minerals of the planet that the race is living on or came from, but it also has to do with the ultraviolet rays of their stars. Okay, some are stronger than others. They're all stars are different. They're not all exactly the same. And of course, that's kind of something they would want us all to believe, but they're not. They're all very, very different. And depending upon the wave of the frequency of the light, of the colors, it will do something to our physiology, and we can have different pigmentations of skin. Um, there are so many different humans that it would boggle the mind. We may all look similar, but we're all pretty different. We can all be extremely different. And so would our biological, our DNA be very, very different as well. And yet, on the outside, we look very, very similar. So, diversity is absolutely the way of the universe. It's everywhere, and Earth has a great deal of diversity, and there's a reason for that. Is that Earth has been kind of this tucked away oasis of an ecosystem that is profoundly complex, that drew a lot of different races to it to not only experiment and to take species of their own, alter it genetically to see if it would survive in our own ecosystem. In other words, see if it could live in the zoo, or they would take something that was here and alter it just a little bit and to see if it could survive here. The only thing that we're aware of that hasn't been altered that was able to basically survive on its own is octopus. The scientists absolutely know for sure they did not come from here. They did not. They're just not indigenous to this planet because they're so different. And, we still haven't discovered everything in the oceans as well either. So there's all kinds of things that go on. Whales come from Sirius, the star system of Sirius, and Arcturus. They come from many other different places as well. The whales, they were brought here. Okay, they were brought here to be the historians of the sea and of the planet. Dolphins were also brought here, and they're probably the smartest beings on the planet that are indigenous or almost indigenous to the planet. They were brought here, but they're indigenous now. They've been here forever, and they're absolutely brilliant. Let's see, what else? They think and they make sounds holographically. Dolphins do. So that's your first clue that they're not from here. Let's see, what else? God, there's just so much. And, I had no idea we were even going this route,
I didn't either.
We didn't have an agenda at all.
No.
Just like, well, what are we going to talk about? I don't know.
But well, here's something interesting we can segue to is, a lot of people may not realize this because when they watch your webinars, your focus is on the Andromedans and what's going on in the world, disclosure, and the star races that are out there. You are actually an avid scholar and very interested in like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, for example. And both of them, were presidents, but Washington was the general commander in chief who became president. And one of the things that I always find interesting about Washington, and I wonder what he would be thinking about America today, is because he was the only president we ever had that said, I don't want to be president. I don't want to run this country. Limit my terms. I don't want to be a king. I don't want to be a tyrant. I just, I'll help you get it started and then I'm walking away. And he did. And the power and the strength of character to do that, I think, has been unmatched. And probably the only person that could come close, I would say, would be Lincoln. He had plans to reunite the country after the Civil War, but they didn't like his unification plan, and so they took him out, and we never got to see if it would work or not.
Well, I think we'll get to Lincoln, but Jefferson was an extraordinary young man, the youngest man of them all. He was only 26 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, just a whippersnapper. And then you had James Madison, who was, I think, 31 or 34 when he wrote the Constitution of the United States. It's a document that holds up even to this day. And then you had John Adams, who nobody liked, but was considered probably the smartest of all of them because he just had this way of taking things apart. And then you had Benjamin Franklin, who knew how to make deals and who contributed a lot to the founding fathers and the movement, but wasn't a president. And then you had guys like Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine, one of the revolutionary writers at that particular time, who was the first person to coin the phrase, the United States of America, in one of his pamphlets. And it stuck. They were calling us the colonies up until that moment, until he wrote that in one of his pamphlets, the United States of America. And he doesn't get credit for that. He was also the first person to say, how is it possible for an island to rule a continent?
Yeah, that's very true.
It is true. Yeah, it's it falls in line with, why do we have to pay to live on a planet we were born on? Wrap your head around that. Why is that? And who are we paying? Why are we paying them? They didn't create the planet. It isn't theirs. So it's just all this stuff. And they were brilliant men, and they had brilliant wives as well. None of these men could have done this by themselves without the support of their families. And, the founding mothers were also extraordinary people. Abigail Adams and what's her name? Madison's wife. Oh gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Dolly Madison. Dolly Madison.
Oh, Dolly, yeah.
Dolly Madison. She was the last person out of the White House in 1814 as the British were coming in the front door to burn the White House down. She was the very last person there, dragging pictures of George Washington out the back and putting it in a carriage, in a cart, as the British were coming in the front door to burn the place down. So, she had some cojones to her. She wasn't afraid of anything. So just extraordinary people. And, the whole idea was they wanted something other than the monarchies, because they realized that living under a monarchy, there is always a boot on your neck. Always. You'll never get up from it. And the only way you could get up on it from it, or get the boot off your neck, was if you completely sold out and compromised everything about yourself. That was the only way to do it. And And one of the things about having stolen the bloodlines, they would often say, well, I was chosen by God to be king. This phenomena, right?
Yeah.
That's bullshit. They stole those seats. They took those seats, or someone in higher power or more wealth or something put them in that place because they knew they could control them and they were puppets. And, if anybody remotely stepped outside those boundaries, terrible things happened to them. So what we're seeing in Iran right now has been going on for thousands of years here with us. And the only thing that broke that chain of suppression and tyranny was the creation of the United States. Now, we're not perfect, but we were being attacked from the get-go. We have never had an opportunity to truly even begin to achieve our full potential because they were after us from the very beginning. And frankly, it's a miracle that we're still here. In my opinion, it's a miracle we're still here. To be able to have this opportunity now to turn this whole thing around and flip the script on all these dirtbags, all these people who sold out humanity, all these people who betrayed not only their own families but themselves for power, to turn this whole thing around back on them so that we, the people, can actually make the decisions as to how we have to live. And getting to Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln used to always say, even in most his darkest hours, he would always go back to the common sense of the people because he said it's never wrong. They always know what the right thing is to do. And for Lincoln, which is why he spent so much time traveling and being around the people and talking to people and the politicking, because he would get these stories and they would share with him things and analogies and anagrams and all these stories that had other hidden meanings to them. They treat us like we were a bunch of pumpkins, but we really weren't. We knew a lot of stuff at that particular time. We knew a lot of history. You have to remember, once you start getting into the Templars and who they are and the things that they knew about coding and mathematics and algebra and the planets and everything, you're truly going to be amazed the shit that they knew. And they were passing that on. They were doing their best to pass that knowledge on so it would not be lost. And that's what the Vatican was trying to shut down. And a lot of the things that the Templars knew, Mario Baglino in his books shares. And he read these documents in the Vatican library. It was his job to transcribe them. But the Templars already knew this stuff and they were out there trying to share it with humanity. Now, were all the Templars dark or perfect, wonderful? I don't know that. Probably not. I mean, we're all human. We make mistakes. We go down wrong roads, bad paths. We make terrible decisions, But the fact of the matter is, the majority of us have sense. We love our families, we love our world, we love our communities, and what we want is peace and prosperity. And there's absolutely no reason whatsoever we shouldn't have that. There's just no reason we shouldn't have that because someone says we shouldn't, because someone says they have to print the money and control and manipulate us, lie to us. We're done with that. We're absolutely done with that. Well, look where it's gotten us. We're all divided. They've trained us all to go to war with each other and with ourselves, and that they're absolutely terrified about us waking up to the true history of what's been going on here, and especially who we are. And that's why, I say the greatest disclosure is going to be about us specifically. Yes, there are extraterrestrials. There's been life everywhere. Many of us on this planet have had other lives in the past or in the future on other stars. Just a fact. You don't have to believe it, but at some point you will know. Okay?
Yeah.
You will know.
Yeah. Here's
And
an interesting thought for you. I
sure.
don't mean to interrupt, but
No, I'm just rambling.
I'm sitting here thinking, how you're talking about how everything correlates and how it's people doing things. And I started thinking like Judas was always thought the betrayer, now vindicated, and everybody says, oh, he sacrificed by doing this great thing. And I look at the Revolutionary War and I'm like, was there a Judas story in our revolution?
Benedict.
And Benedict Arnold came to
Benedict.
mind. And I can't help but, look at Andre, the British master spy, was operational throughout the North. Nobody could ever catch him. But the second he deals with Arnold, he gets caught and hung. And I can't help but wonder, did Arnold really truly betray us? Or was it kind of a plot to get Andre? And he was the quote sacrificial lamb and said, I'll be forever marked as the traitor to the US to get
Oh,
that guy.
no. Actually, what happened was, I don't think our what's his name,
Andre?
Andre. I don't think Andre knew that they were already watching Jefferson. I mean, Arnold. That they were watching Arnold. I don't think he realized, because remember when they got captured Arnold, he had letters in his bag from the other guy. He had, so they knew who he was. They knew
Right.
who he was, but he had letters. Benedict Arnold had the letters on him. That was the only way they knew. If he wasn't carrying that letter bag, if he had dropped it, there's no telling what would have happened.
Right. That's what I'm
Okay?
meaning by, did he do it on purpose?
No, Arnold was very unhappy with Congress. For one, he hadn't been paid. None of them had been paid. Two, he wanted to be a general because he had fought some battles and did some really good things, and he had saved his unit from being destroyed,
Saratoga.
and Saratoga, and Jefferson. I'm sorry, Washington put in for his commission, and the Congress said no. And some of that had to do with Benedict Arnold's relationship with some members of Congress before the war. Okay, he was considered a very good soldier, very smart, knew what he was doing, but after having a few cocktails, he was known to be a real asshole, and he had pissed off some people in the pubs, okay, in Philadelphia, and that came back to haunt him. And they were like, "No way are we giving this guy a commission? No way." So he flipped. Now, do we know how long was he talking to um,
Andre.
Andre? How long was he talking to him? We don't know that. Was it going on? Was Andre the one who initiated the separation, the betrayal? We don't know that either. What we do know is that he had letters, that Benedict Arnold had letters from Andre and intelligence of Washington's movements, etc., and he was taking them to the British in Philadelphia.
And, it's interesting too, is like you're talking about the founding wives, so to speak, if we call them that, if we were to give them a title, that when you look at the Arnold story, a lot of people don't know this, but it wasn't an accident that Andre met Arnold. It was Arnold's wife was, they say they found evidence, had relations with Andre, but her parents would never sign off on the marriage, and Arnold came along and they said, "Oh, we'll give you Arnold." And so she introduced Andre to Arnold when he was in his dark place, and they say that's what led Arnold to become the betrayer as the woman. And part of me is like, that seems too convenient and like too obvious, but the women in those days did carry a lot of weight and power that people don't realize.
Yeah, yeah. Nothing got done without them. And if the men are off at war, who's running? Who's running everything? It was in many communities. It was the women.
Right.
You know, um,
And
the women were the midwives. They bore the children. They birthed the children. When people were sick, when the men came home wounded, it was the midwives and the wives and the daughters that cared for the wounded soldiers. They were the center of everything, which was exactly the way it was just before the Inquisition in Europe. Everything centered around the women of the community, the midwives especially, because they knew everything about everybody, because they brought everybody in. They healed the sick. They took care of them. They fixed the wounded men. They did all of it, and they weren't buying what the church was selling. They simply weren't, you know. And so they made the decision to take them out. Well, we didn't do that here, uh, but the British did terrible things to some of the women here.
oh
You know,
yeah.
with their Stamp Act, they could burst into any house at any time and say, "We're here to count the papers," and if there was no stamp on it, they were in trouble. And they would also have to pay a fine for whichever piece of paper they had in their possession that didn't have a seal on it from the king. Most people don't even know the story. And they could stay there. They could make them subservient. They could rape them, which is often what happened. Terrible things, terrible, terrible things happened.
It is. And on the flip side of that, something that I came across reading in a couple of books was that I found interesting is like John Adams' wife, Abigail. She would get together with her lady friends while the war was going on, and they were making saltpeter, which is what we call musket powder today. And we look at it today and we're like, it's a very specific science mix. But yeah, here are these women that are just getting together and making the mixture and for the army and going, and we're like, well, the women never went to college. The women weren't educated. Then how did they know the correct mixture for saltpeter? How
Right.
did they know how to make gunpowder? And it's like,
They've always known. They've always
yeah,
known. And the truth of the matter is that, and I'll just say this. I'll just say this because it's true. In many circumstances, the women were smarter than the men, even though they weren't given the stature in the community. They were smarter. They knew how things should run. They knew how it should work, how it wouldn't work. They figured all this out already, um, and that's because nature chose women to birth humanity. So they would be smart. They would figure things out.
yeah,
They just had this innate sense of how things should work, and they still do to this day.
yeah. And
So,
the amazing thing is, through the Revolution and the Civil War, the true master spies were
women,
the women and the female slaves. And it's like people don't want to give them credit. And it's like, really? We would have like probably 1/16 of the intelligence that we ever got from having the balloons and all the other operations going on, and because of them. And they weren't just spies. That was the interesting thing is, if say I heard reports like, if they were in, say, Fredericksburg, and they were like, hey, our army's 2 days away. We need them to stay there. The women would start to host parties and keep the officers there, keep them entertained so they didn't want to leave. And it bought time for the other armies to come. And nobody ever, hears about that. They all say, oh, the armies went through and sacked everything and were horrible. It was like, no, sometimes they were, there on purpose. They didn't know they were there on purpose. But yeah, and that's where they were caught by surprise, is going, wait, how did they get here? And they never figured out, oh, it was these people.
I know. Is there anybody listening? Are we just by ourselves?
We got at least 4 people watching.
Oh, okay. Hi. I didn't even know if anybody was listening.
But, and this is one of the reasons why I love how you and I do these shows, is you and I both have like this love of history and everything, but it's not the history of the book. It's the history that's under the book that they want to keep under the rug, so to speak. And we're like, nope, we're having too much fun exposing this. So it's coming out.
It's the history between the lines,
Yeah.
That's the juicy stuff. Erlen, you have to wait, okay? You gotta wait.
And one thing that's, I'll say this, for society and the way we are is, I was visiting someone at a hospital recently, and when I was leaving, one of the helicopters came in and landed, and I was like, it's a full female crew. And I was like, how cool is it that this helicopter, one, is being piloted by a female, two, the entire crew is female. And I'm like, that's really cool to see. And it's not like I'm saying, hooray for feminism and women, need to be uplifted. It's just seeing that they're in this position where people's lives are on the line and being treated equal.
We just have to get out of their way.
Yeah.
That's all we have to do. Just get out of their way. Yep. And that hasn't changed at all today. We still need to get out of their way. I mean, it's amazing we have to pass laws like this because people just don't have any common sense.
Yeah, they need to go find Thomas Paine's book.
It's just very, very interesting.
It is, and I know you had wanted to do this for an hour. We're at 59 minutes. Do you want to talk a little bit of your webinars before we go, or promote anything?
I do a webinar to the 4 of you. I do a webinar on Fridays at noon Mountain Time. And we cover a lot of different things. And once or twice a month, I'll have a guest speaker. This Friday, it's just me, and it's a Q&A. Next Friday, it will be Dr. Christiana Northrup will be my guest.
Oh, wow.
And speaking of women, the goddess, she's very fiery and full of everything. And she's a great guest and just a great lady. So if you have absolutely nothing to do, and you should bump into the channel by mistake, we'd love to have you. So I don't know, Michael. I don't like selling myself. I just.
Well, you're not selling yourself. You're giving people the option to tune in to hear you share some insight. Put it that way.
Okay. Okay. We'll go with that. So, before we started the taping, I was telling Michael about somebody had put up a video on TikTok, and it had my face, and it was a clip of a video that I did back in the early 90s. and it had under this caption that that a, a a scientist that worked at Area 51 was unalive after watching this video or after talking about these things and the videos of me. So I don't know who put this thing together. The video has been out since 91, and that is me. But I never worked at 51. I've never been to 51, and clearly I'm not dead. But I also had another death thing that, and I'll just share this with you before I go, because I think this is hilarious. Somebody had posted about, I think 3 years ago, maybe 4, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, on Carrie Cassidy's Camelot page, the chat, that I had passed away one weekend. And it was probably one of those times when I was just very quiet. I wasn't saying anything, which, I really like, not having to say anything. More than you know. And so somebody put this up that I had passed away that weekend. So I get this phone call from a friend of mine in Australia, and I have caller ID. And so I pick up the phone and I go, "Hey." He goes, "Yo, mate, you dead?" I go, "No, not yet." "All right, well, I'll call you back later." Then he hangs up. That's my best Australian accent. And, there are just so many things that are so comical and ridiculous. And, there have been threats in the past when I was younger. There were definitely threats, and a period of 6 years where I did nothing, said nothing, just worked and raised a family, started a family and raised it with my wife at the time. And but it's we've come a long way in the 30 plus years I've been doing it, nearly 35 now, and maybe 35. We've come such a long way that, you can see the shift, you can feel the shift happening in people. And all I want to say in closing out here with you four is that I couldn't be more prouder of you for sitting through this hour. I'm sure it was torture. And just being curious to want to know what's happening and to find out about what's going on around you and in life. I mean, it's so easy to just have on the blinders, and it takes a lot of strength and courage to remove the blinders and make the decision to see what's real out there. And you're to be commended for that. You are. Now is not the time to put the blinders back on, though. All right? Now is the time to be more curious, to do more research, to investigate. And if I had one thing to tell you about that, whatever the mainstream media tells you, the truth is exactly the opposite. Okay? I mean, literally, it is exactly the opposite. It's amazing, and it shows you the contrast between light and dark, and that's really, really important to see and to understand, is the contrast between light and dark. Because once you figure out how the dark fools you, then you know how they operate, and you will never be fooled again. And that's the lesson here for everyone that's going through everything that's being shown today, is for the dark side to expose themselves and how they operate and how they lie and they fool people, which is the only reason they've acquired so much power, because they were very, very good at it. But the minute you stop being fooled, they cannot take your power from you. They're absolutely useless at that point. and we're in that stage now of the Great Awakening, is the exposing of the dark and how it operates, and how their power, the only power they have over people, is to condition us to think the way they want us to. So hopefully that was clearer than mud. I'm not sure, but
Oh, it was very clear.
okay, good,
I
good.
think
So
it landed perfectly and was really well stated. And I actually have two messages for you before I let you go.
me,
Yes.
okay,
First message is from my heart to you. Thank you for your service to the country and the sacrifices that you made.
thank you.
And you're welcome. And my second message, this one is truly from my heart, and that is, and that I'm almost getting emotional saying it because I know how you're gonna react to it. It's like I just because we're such good friends, but I'm gonna persevere. I'll get through this.
Take a deep breath. Oh,
No, almost got me choking on the ohm part. But from my heart and the heart of my shows to you, Alex, thank you for your service to humanity. It's seen, it's heard, it's felt, and it's appreciated more than you know. So thank you.
well, Michael, I'm one of humanity. you know, I had nowhere else to go but to fight. I had no choice. I mean, because once you take your head out of the sand and you see and then there's no way to put it, but you can't go back.
Right.
So
I just, yeah,
and once I started having kids, I was totally vested in this and humanity, and I love us. I think we have. I think we're a miracle. All the shit that we've been through, and we're still here. You know,
yeah,
bearing children and hoping for greater days, better days. Look, wanting peace and prosperity, and Michael, you're a great friend, and I've known Michael. Became very very good friends. His dad was one of my best friends. His mom is one of my best friends, and his mom is presently dealing with an illness, and she could use all of your prayers, um, because she's just a great lady, and they had a great kid.
she is.
Yeah, and they had a great kid. His name is Michael Comp, right here. And Michael and I drove to Dallas and hooked up with him, and your dad was still living at the time. And then we drove to
Florida,
Florida to the
the
hell
very first GSIC.
for the very first GSIC. We drove there and on the way back and to Dallas in my car, and it was a great adventure. it was a great adventure.
It was.
Yeah,
We had a lot of great conversations, and we made each other laugh a lot.
we did. We had some
And
experiences.
and one thing I'll share real quick, and I want to thank you especially for this, is I was traveling back from the conference when I got tragic news that my little guy spirit had passed away the night before we got there. And Alex, being, I'm traveling with, I knew he had certain times that he wanted to make everything happen. But when he heard, the first thing he said to me was, do you need to stay here? Are you, do you need time? What do you need? And it was like, in that moment, I was like so touched because I was like, he could have easily said, hey man, give me the keys, I'll drive, let you process this, and you do this so you could stay on your schedule. But instead, you sat there and was like, you gave me the heart space to heal, pull myself together enough to where I was like, yeah, I need to get home. I'm in the space to get home. And we did it. And so I want to thank you for being there and for giving me that space.
You're welcome. In short, you get what you give. Whatever it is that you put out, you will always get back. And Michael, you're a great kid. You're a great young man. You really are. And it's always an honor and a privilege. It's an honor and a privilege to know you and to know your family. One of the most genuine people you'll ever meet, folks. And not a lot of people. They're not all genuine. They're just not. Some of you wonder if they're even human.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know what we get on this, a thumb up or a thumb down, or or one of these. I don't know.
Hey, we gained a viewer.
We did at the end, maybe because she's thrilled it's over. I don't know. Oh,
but
anyway, Michael, it's been an honor and privilege. I hope we do this again.
yes, I enjoy our conversations and the freedom that we just cut loose and just talk about whatever, just have a conversation. And I also want to say, it's inspiring not only, to have you as my friend, but to look at you and go, like you said, you've been doing this for 35 years. You could have easily had said, you know what, nothing's happening. Nobody's, really caring. I'm just going to hang it up and just live out my life and just disappear to it. But instead, you said, no, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep putting it out there. I'm going to keep trying. And so it's inspiring to see, that in you, that you show us that, we don't have to give up that because we don't see something, because it's like you said, it's all these little wins that we never pay attention to along the way that make it worthwhile.
Well, in truth, there were some fuck it moments. There really were. There really were many of those at times. Like, fuck it, I'm done. There were many. But something would happen. I would talk to Mornay. I would have a visitation, or somebody would come up to me and say, "Hey, thank you for what you're doing. It makes such a difference." Or they would ask about the kids, and you're and then you flip right back into what am I doing? And there were times I didn't know what I wanted to do with this, because it was, you were crazy, you were a conspiracy theorist, you were a nutter, you were all these things, all these labels, just were piled on me. And it was easier before the internet, but once the internet happened and my kids learned how to use it, that made it even tougher, because they're like,
yeah.
"Hey, Dad, is this you?" "Yeah." "How come these people say these bad things about you?" And I said, "Well, honey, I don't really know. They don't know me, And that made it even more of a, what am I doing? What am I doing? But somehow they all managed to be better than me. So, and I'm sure it's their mothers.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so there were a lot of fuck it times. I have to admit that. So,
Well,
but here we are.
Yeah, I can say I'm glad you are where you are and you're still doing it. And I know you are cutting back a little bit and, focusing more on the webinars and not doing a lot of appearances anymore. And I gotta say, I've kind of noticed with myself, I'm kind of pulling back too, and not being so in the forefront.
Well, you have other people coming up. You have Elena Danan, who's just remarkable, a remarkable woman who's having all these incredible experiences and contacts, and she definitely represents the goddess. And there's all these other feminine goddesses that are coming forward, and I was told that the feminine principle would, in the end, would be dominant for a period of time to bring back balance to the planet. And there are these people, these ladies coming forward, and you have a lot of other speakers as well coming forward. Young people that can talk the language and that the younger generations can relate to. Um, my decades of speaking, I Mornay's always referred to it as a bridge. I was just to be a bridge over so many decades to this point right now, you know. And now there are these other folks coming forward, like I said, Elena Danan, coming forward and talking about all these things. Tony Rodriguez, and you have others who are not involved with the ET thing, like Sarge, Sarge and Decode, Tony Rodriguez, the ex heavyweight champion, remarkable work. Wano Savin, Colonel Bosi down in Australia, a Patriot Street Fighter. All these people are coming forward and they're sharing information and they're getting involved, and they have an audience of people who are now listening and are opening their eyes, and they're moving the energy forward, and it's building momentum. And I don't believe that there is ever going to be a way to stop it, that it's here to stay. What is it that the Q team says? Nothing can stop what is coming.
Right.
Boom-rah. That's exactly where we need to be. We need to be making sure that this keeps moving, because we have to know what we don't know that's been hidden from us. And we're
Right.
going to be shocked to find out it's almost everything.
Yeah, and
Anything worthwhile they did not share with us.
I love the memes that are coming out now, where it's where everybody goes, yeah, they're talking about a storm that's coming, and then at the bottom it goes, because I am the storm, and it's like, yeah, we're all waking up and realizing who and what we are. And before I let you go, Alex, I have a dear friend in the chat room, and she has a couple messages for you.
Okay.
She says, if Alex didn't share his info, I would not be able to. And thank you for being such a brave pioneer.
Well, when the Grizzlies are chasing you, hon, you don't have a choice, do you?
Yeah.
You don't have a choice. You have to fight.
I see you being able to turn and look at that grizzly face to face and end up becoming great friends.
Or lunch.
Well, yeah, there's that option too.
What's that old saying? Somebody once said, "You'll never be shit," and then I got eaten by a bear.
Yeah. She's commenting there, chasing me now. Lots of laughs.
Well, that means you're on the right track. It means you're doing all the right things. So, hang in there, okay? Just keep doing your thing, and eventually, as your frequency continues to rise, they will just disappear. They will not be able to compete with your energy and your frequency. And at some point, you will look around and you'll realize they're gone. They're not even there, because you have moved so far out ahead of them because of who you are. And you should always know that. Okay? You should always know.
Yeah, she says thank you.
You're welcome.
With 4 or 5 exclamation points. It's hard to read those sometimes. How many?
It's okay. I get the gist.
I can laughingly say, Alex, I'm getting to the same point as you, to where it's like the guys are not as young as they used to be.
No, no, no. You know,
Well, and I also want to say, Alex, thank you for coming on tonight, because I know you have a busy schedule. And what in transparency, what people don't know is I actually approached you a few months ago because I know how far you book out, and I said my birthday's on Sunday. Would you be willing to come on the show and on Wednesday? And you were like, let's make it happen. So thank you.
you're very welcome. What Earth age are you going to be on Sunday?
Uh, on the 15th, I became, what is it, 48.
48. God, you
Yeah,
look a lot younger than
I know. I look in the mirror
that.
too, and I'm
Like
like,
30s. You look like you're in your 30s.
I know. It's like sometimes I look in the mirror and I'm like, I don't look my age, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, yeah. And you still have hair. That's amazing too.
Yeah, I gotta keep it trimmed up now that we're getting in the summertime, because that's the funny thing about having like the beard is the summertime it wants to really bush out, and then if I cut it in the winter, it's like, nope, you decided to cut it. We're done. I'm like, no, this is what I need you to bush out.
Well, we didn't have a winter here this year in Colorado. Not at all. I mean, I think we had maybe 5 days where we had moisture, snow, and or rain. Um, Today it was 83 degrees.
Oh my lord, we were
In
like 79, so we're
Colorado,
not that far behind.
in March in Colorado, and the next 3 days it's going to be in the 80s. And the weather here has just been absolutely spectacular. But all the creeks are low, all the rivers are low because we haven't had any water. So we're hoping in April, we get some dumps, some serious snow dumps, which traditionally we do. We get our biggest snowfalls in April. But we're hoping it's either snow or rain. It doesn't matter at this point, as long as we get it.
Right.
So, uh, but anyway,
Well,
it's
everybody that's watching this, let's send prayers and energy of rain to Colorado.
a actually send love and healing to Nancy, who's Michael's mother. Okay, I'm sure she's not watching. At least I hope not. I hope she's resting and but
I feel she is.
she's a great lady. Anyway, Michael, thank you. It's been a pleasure for to the five of you. Thank you for being here and supporting Michael and his channel. And
Hey, we actually made it to 6 now. We're starting to grow. It's always at the end. I've always noticed that and wonder why at the end is everybody tuning in.
I don't know. I don't know. It's always baffled me as well. So, well,
But
to number six, thank you for arriving late. I'm so sorry. The Collier's about to sign off. And anyway,
and
Michael,
for
we'll do
those
this.
that came late, I did put a link to Alex's webinars on the screen, and they are on Fridays. So do tune in. He does share a lot of great information and insights. And one of the interesting things about Alex that I enjoy watching his webinars is when the Q&As come in and somebody asks a question he doesn't know the answer to, he doesn't BS the crowd. He just simply goes, I don't know. Next question. He doesn't make anything up. So he is genuine, authentic, sharing what he knows. So do tune in and support his webinars as well. And to everyone that's watching, thank you for all your support and everything. And thank you for watching this. And those of you who are waking up and going to watch this, thank you. And Midnight Guardian asking, is this going to be recorded? It actually is live, and the replays will be available as soon as I hit end stream. So it is being recorded. So if you missed anything, you're welcome to rewatch. And blessings to you, Alex, and blessings to you on all your upcoming events. I know you'll do great. I believe in you, and my only advice to you is when you start to question everything, you're at a point in your life I feel like you deserve to have fun. So just have fun with it. So if you question why am I doing this, just say to have some fun.
Okay. I'll take your advice.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Good night, folks.
Good night, everybody.